Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on optimizing your 3ds Max for renders. My name is Alyssa Juris and I'm a BIM specialist at Baker Baines, and let's get to it. Right, so who is Baker Baines in case any of you guys didn't know? We are one of the largest gold partners, and we specialize in the following in spaces, which is architecture, engineering, construction, process plant and power, manufacturing, and safety and simulation. And we offer a few other services which include CAD learning and have an authorized training center at our offices. Here at Baker Baines, we believe in designing a better world, in delivering a better product or project, and in technological adoption to produce better results. Okay, our agenda for today is factors that affect the render. So we're going to go through some factors that might affect your render time and your renders itself. So a couple of things would be your renderer. What type of render engine are you using with the software? And other things include your computer settings, so what is on your PC, and what kind of software settings might we look at to see how we can optimize these renders. So the next session that we're looking at is renderers. What type of render engines do we have? Just some of the few ones and the differences and things to consider with those. And then the next thing on there would be looking at your PC settings and configuration, which includes things like your graphics card, your memory and power plan, and lastly, your software settings through scene optimization and the render setup. Right, so let's look at the first one, which is the renders there. Okay, there's a few renderers that I put up on the screen and on the slide. A few of these you would be familiar with. Some may be completely foreign and new to you. And I just put this up to just show the basic differences between the renderers. Although you might be kind of used to one renderer, it's nice to look at what do the others kind of offer. So example, like your art renderer, it's a physically based renderer, ideal for design visualization workflows. Art Render also includes a noise filter to smooth the image and better control rendering time. The main factor there is it is a CPU-based renderer. And what does that mean? So often people, just choose a renderer without actually understanding what type of function on their PC this renderer is using. So you get GPU renderers and CPU renderers. The differences there would be GPU is using your graphics card. Okay, you may have an installed graphics card on your PC, and the GPU-based renderer would use that graphics card to make the most of the render and the render time. And a CPU-based renderer is using your onboard graphics card, which is your built-in PC graphics card, irrespective if you've installed one on there. So it's something to always look at when looking at the renderer and thinking about the time that it takes to do a render. If you look at something like iRay, which is part of NVIDIA, and this uses both GPU and CPU, along with a whole bunch of other differences between the first two. And the rest that you see there are usually for GPU, but you do get a few that are for CPU as well. So it would be a good idea to just check up on your renderer and see what is it actually using on your PC. So the things to consider when choosing a renderer for your 3ds Max software is is the renderer CPU based or GPU based? Okay, that is the main decider when it comes to what exactly, if it's using the graphics card on your PC or an installed one on your PC. Okay, it's no use buying an expensive graphics card if your renderer is using a CPU-based function, and then it's going to just use, you know, the onboard graphics card that was built into the system. So which version of 3ds Max is being supported by the renderer? That's also a very important one to take into account. Is usually on the renderer engine's websites, you would find that kind of information of or which version of Max does it support. So you want to maybe check out before upgrading you know, your software to a 2019 3D Studio Max, and then realize that, hey, your renderer that you use doesn't even support that version. So maybe check out all of those things before upgrading your projects and programs. It's not a necessity to always upgrade the software to the latest version. If you prefer a 2018 to a 2017 or 2019, it's no problem to be using that. What are the system requirements for the chosen renderer? So often companies or people will look at buying a PC to use as a render engine or render PC, but look to the software for this for the system requirements and forget about the render or the renderer engine. So often you have to look at both what are the requirements for the software as well as your chosen renderer. So you could find that on your renderer's website or homepage. And so you can take those two bits of information and just compare it before choosing or buying a new PC that you're going to use for your renders. What are the prices of these renderers? So often, like, these renderers are a third-party application rather, so they do need activation and things like that. So it's worth checking out, you know, the licensing for those, as well as the prices and things like that, and comparing all of those factors together. And the main thing is, what is the differences in render quality? It's worth checking out a couple of the renderers and seeing which one gives you the best output. But obviously there's always some involvement, human involvement in changing up settings to get the best output. So those are the few things that you can look at when choosing a renderer. Okay, I'll come back to that. So the next thing that I just want to speak about is maybe the PC settings and how can we change our PC settings to get the most off of our PC. So just remember that when using 3ds Max and a render software, any render software, it's not just the software alone, it's a bunch of factors to take into consideration. One being your PC and its ability to handle the render itself, and what can we do to ensure that it does with without crashing, because that's a big thing that happens now and then. You don't want to wait for like 3 hours and then your render crashes in between whilst it's being rendered. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of things. The first one being your graphics card. So if your PC or if your 3ds Max and your renderer is using your graphics card or your onboard graphics card, either or, so the first thing you maybe want to look at is your graphics card, whether it's installed or built into the PC, is it up to date? So to do this, I'm just going to switch the screen quickly. All right, so to do this, I'm just in my control panel, and I just want to navigate around here a bit to just show you how to make sure that your graphics card is up to date with the latest updates and ensuring that it's, you know, tip-top shape. So let's maybe go to, let's just check out here, hardware and sound. So I'm going to hardware and sound, so control panel, hardware and sound, and let's look at device manager. So in your device manager is basically where whatever devices are installed into your PC are managed. So things like your printers and stuff like that. And what we're looking for is your display adapters. So if I drop that down, I'll be able to see there's two display adapters, one being an installed graphics card, the latter, that's installed on my PC, and the first one that you see there is just your basic graphics onboard system or adapter. So I can right click this and update the driver. I can either search it automatically online if you have internet connection, to just search for an update online that will download the found update, and if not, if it's up to date, it's going to tell me, hey, it's up to date, you're good to go. Okay, all right, that's exactly what it's saying. Alternatively, if you right clicked, did an update driver, you could have had an installed or a file that had the update in it, and that's where you would use the latter option in there. So that's the first thing that we want to maybe just look at. After we look at that, okay, so that's either if you have one of those two options. If you have a graphics card installed, and if you want to make use of that, maybe let's just quickly go through how looking at those settings. So if it's installed on your PC, you would be able to see in your control panel, okay, under hardware and sound, there should be a graphics card control panel. So right now I have a NVIDIA graphics card, that's why it says NVIDIA control panel. So I'm going to look for that, and then I'm going to click to open that. Let's check out what it's doing. So even if, so this is more likely if you're using a renderer that is using your graphics card, but you can also set this up in case you want to, while working, you know, your software may be using your graphics card just to help you run the application better, not necessarily render through it. So it can be used either or. So let's see how we can maybe fill up with these settings and change a couple of them. So the first thing that you see there is 3D settings, and there's adjust image settings with preview. So essentially on this page, you can see that there's a little image in here, performance and qualities on the left. So what this basically means is I can either let the 3D application, whatever application it might be, decide what the output is, whether it's performance or quality of image. Or essentially I can come right to the bottom here where it says use my preference, emphasizing a certain either quality or performance. If I click on that one, okay, I can set whether I want it to use performance or quality or somewhere in between, okay, a balanced session. So obviously quality is going to give you better quality images, but not necessarily be okay with the time wise. It may take a bit longer. Essentially performance is going to do the opposite. You might not have the best quality like that there, but you might have the render out a little bit quicker. So you can maybe set this, if there's something specific that you want to do, you can set this accordingly. Okay, I'm just going to put that back in here. And the second thing to look at on the control panel is your manage 3D settings. If I just click on that, it may take some time to load. Let's just wait for it. Perfect. All right. So what this is basically allows you to set what programs run with the or helped by the graphics card, if I might. So I can select a program to add onto this. So essentially this list that you see here are the programs that are currently added onto the list. And I don't see 3ds Max on here, so I essentially can add in 3ds Max. Let's see it there. Okay, and I can add the selected program to run with the graphics card. Okay, essentially, if I just look down here, there's some preset settings in here that I grayed out. Okay, but these also would help you get better render time, especially if your renderer is using your graphics card to render. So essentially, if I want to make this available for me to change, just change some of the properties in here, I am going to click that drop-down menu. I'm just going to wait for this to respond quickly. Let's maybe click apply. Okay, just waiting for it. Okay, perfect. Okay, I still don't see my option to drop that down, but essentially I'm just going to pop over to this section, which is the same settings in there. I'm just going to quickly show you that you can change these settings on here accordingly. Okay, each of these settings and features mean something, and you can switch it off, switch it on, or let the application decide how it should be used. And these will directly affect your render time if your renderer runs with your graphics card. So I'm just going to pop over onto the screen something that is suggested for, if I might quickly just change the screen there. Okay, so suggested graphics card settings. This is some of the settings that you will see there, not all of them. So the ones that are left out are probably, to be left as is, but these are some of the settings that might directly affect your render time and so on. So it's worth maybe taking a screenshot or something that can allow you to look at these a little later when you're kind of fiddling around with your graphics card and so on. Okay, I'm going to leave it on the screen for a while. And right, let me just switch the screen quickly. Another thing that we could talk about is, what is your power plan on your PC? Okay, so something that's easily overlooked is your power plan, and whether your PC is getting the most amount of power during the render, right? That could directly affect a lot of the render time as well. So I want to look to control panel again, and I'm going to look at system and security. Okay, under system and security, we're going to look for power options and click on power options. Okay, there's two options in there. Usually we have it on balanced, okay? But if you want to kind of spend a lot of power on this render and this application, you want to maybe change to high performance to ensure that all of this power is going into that application. And also just maybe take a look at some of the settings in there. You'll see that it needs to be plugged in and so on, right? So maybe those are some of the things that also would affect your render time. The last thing there that I can remember and think about of the PC settings is your memory on your PC. So a lot of the time when you're doing renders, the render application uses the PC's memory to store some folders and files on there temporarily before creating the output of the render. So let's just make sure that we have adequate amounts of memory. So you want to check your C drive and clean out any files and folders. Just do a clean on your PC. One place that I do know of that is never cleaned a lot, and it builds up and piles up, and a lot of the 3ds Max temp files are stored there. And if I might just go to my search button and search for run, and let's click on run, right? And what I'm going to type in is %, temp, %, okay? Click OK to run that. And it will bring me here to the temp folder, so my users temp folder, and a lot of unnecessary files are stored here. And there's, I can see some, what is this? Some Civil 3D files that are being stored there, and I'm obviously not using a lot of these files because it's just temporarily here for when you open up the application and use it. So you want to make sure maybe we delete the contents of the folder, not the folder, the contents of the folder. So I'm selecting all of it, right-clicking and deleting. You might get a few items that pop up saying, hey, you know, I can't really delete this. You can just skip those files, okay? So you can just skip those files and ignore them for now. Okay, it's cleaning that out, and you can see that there is less items in here. Okay, so that's one of the other things you want to make sure you do on your PC. All right, the last thing that we can quickly talk about is your software and your software settings. Okay, so while this is busy recycling and doing its thing, I'm just going to switch to 3ds Max. All right, so a couple of things that we can do, and I'm just going to talk about. So I just have a small file open in here just to basically show you navigation and what to do and where to go to. So the first thing we want to maybe do is to check out our render setup. Okay, so under rendering, I'm just going to go to render setup, and there's a setting in here that would help us. So again, you can choose your render and all the necessary information that you might need. But then we want to go to the renderer panel and scroll right to the bottom and make sure that this option is unticked. So this is memory management, okay? And essentially, if I click on conserve memory, it's going to give me not the best quality render. So essentially, I want to have this unticked to not have a restriction with regards to the memory, especially if I have a good PC. So we want to keep that unticked in there. Other things that we could maybe talk about is optimizing your render scene. Okay, so make sure that it's cleaned out. Okay, unnecessary things, let's just delete those information. You often get a lot of scripts to run in 3ds Max that help you clear out your scene to make it run a little bit better, because often there is some kind of complications or complex information on there, or things that aren't cleaned out, so you maybe want to just kind of take a look at that. But other than that, if you select any object, so if I just select that object, for instance, and if I go to my modifiers menu and I'm looking at mesh editing, okay, and in there we have an optimize option. So I can click on optimize and change some of these settings in here to optimize the scene. Okay, it might change a little bit with regard to the shape, so you want to make sure that these kind of optimized tools and settings are used on things that are maybe further away, that are not directly right in front of the render and it looks a bit distorted and deformed. It's things a little bit further away, just to help you. Things that are, you know, relevant to be in the render but unnecessary to be very close up. So you want to maybe fiddle around with these settings on the right here and optimize your scene using this setting. Another thing is to reduce the number of lights. So I don't have, you know, amount of light in here. So you want to maybe reduce the amount of light. So go through your scene, go through your information. Is it necessary to have that light in there? If it's not, just remove it. It could be taking up space and increasing your render time for no reason at all. Another thing would be to disable receive and cast shadows. So again, we're going to click whatever object that we might want to click. We'll right click it, and what I'm looking for is object properties. So I'm just clicking on object properties there, and under general we're going to look to rendering control, and there should be receive and cast shadows. So there might be items, again, if unnecessary to have this ticked on, you might as well just tick it off if it's not directly in front and needs to have that shadows and cast and received. You might as well just untick it because it might be unnecessary for us to have that. It's taking up more time and it doesn't really serve any purpose. Okay, don't do it for everything. You need to choose out what objects you think don't need these kind of settings. And while I'm in here, there's also, if I just look above that, is visible to reflection or refraction. So that again is light bouncing off certain objects or being refracted off certain objects. So if you don't need that reflection off of this certain object, you want to maybe tick these off, okay? So again, you need to sift out what's important to have this on and what isn't important to have this on. Okay, that's going to reduce your render time. Okay, give you faster render. All right, so let's just cancel out of here. And maybe the last thing that I can think of would be to also try out different renderers. Like, you know, you may be set in a specific renderer that you use, but you may want to go and try out the others just to check the differences in quality and render time. You would maybe find that there's one that suits you a little bit more and suits what you're doing a little bit more than what you're using. All right, so I'm just quickly going to, again, switch my screen. All right, perfect. Okay, so the summary. So basically, we went through factors that affect your renders. We went through some renderers, not in a big detail, but just the basic differences to look for. And the big difference there would be CPU versus GPU-based renderer. And the differences being, one is using your onboard graphics card, and the GPU is using your install graphics card. So you want to maybe look at those things. And we talked about other things to consider other than those items. One being the system requirements, which is also very important to check up on what are the system requirements for the renderer as well as the software. The other things that we spoke about are the PC settings and configuration. We took a look at the graphics card, irrespective if your renderer was using the graphics card or not. Your software might be needing the graphics card just to run itself. So we checked up those settings under control panel, and we added the application to be run under that graphics card. We also checked if our graphics drivers were updated. We checked that under device manager. The next thing that we did there was we deleted the temp folder contents and created more memory and space for our software and our render when it's being run. And we also made sure that the power plan that we have there was set on high performance to ensure that the most amount of power is going to your PC while its render is carrying on. Then the last thing that we looked at was software settings. So things like under render setup, there's conserve memory. Let's just make sure that's unticked to get the best quality image that we can possibly get. Also, we did a scene optimization by clicking an object, whatever it might be, and going to optimize that specific object. We also then clicked objects and checked out how to disable shadows and also disable reflection and refraction visibility if not necessary on that specific object. Other things that we looked at was, or even spoke about, was reducing the number of lights as well. So that was basically it. And thank you for joining our webinar. If you have any queries or questions, please forward them to me along with suggested topics that you might want to see in future. But thank you for joining us and have a good day.